Greetings, mind crafters, and welcome to another interesting, it definitely is for me, episode today. Another Mindcraft episode. Remember, we're talking about the brain. We're talking about taking the reins of that thoroughbred as the little jockey's on its back. Metaphor. Us, sort of navigating this powerhouse we call the brain to direct it as we so please. So, my name is Kimberly Quinn and I am your hostess with the mostest today to discuss, how we learn to become the boss of the brain. And so, today, what I'd like to talk about is how to cultivate hope. That is our topic of discussion today, and I need to do a shout out to, or I am doing a shout out to, Dr. Dan Tomasulo, who is also a contributing writer for Psychology Today. I have to tell you, I very much enjoy writing for Psychology Today. Um, so this is a shout out. So I was kind of reading this, and I'll admit I had a little bit of bias because a very, very, very good friend of mine, you basically who I've known for most of my life, has whenever I'd say, "Oh, I hope to do this," and this was back in the day because I don't say it anymore. I hope to do this, hope to do that, and he would say to me, "Hope is not a plan," and he's right. Hope is not a plan. And this article actually in Psych Today talks about. This Dan starts out by saying, "Unique among all the positive emotions, hope requires some degree of dissonance, difficulty, negativity, or uncertainty to be ignited. If there isn't something awry, we don't call upon hope." So we get to the hope isn't the plan part. First, we have to, it's important to just sort of realize that Dan is spot on here because obviously we're not even entertaining an idea of hope unless we've been met with some sort of adversity. Usually, we can do the hopes and dreams, and kind of like kindergarten. I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. I hope to be a firefighter when I grow up. Though really talking about calling on hope is, we're in a not so good place, and we're really focusing on climbing out of that not so good place. And this is really what we're talking about today. And so Dan continues, he says, he's talking about when you study hope, and I'm thinking, whoever thought that hope was a field of study, but like I think of Brene Brown with, and I crack up when she cracks up also when she tells a story, but she'll be on an airplane or something. And they'll say, "What do you do? What do you do?" All that small talk. And she's like, "Well, I research shame." And she says, people just like back right up, so it just, I think to some people, if you're not in the sort of psychology biz, can find it strange. But anyway, if you're in the hope biz, he said, Dan says, people high in hope have sustainably better physical and mental well being. That's not a huge surprise. I'm saying that. Then he says they also tend to live longer and happier lives. High hope people see and respond to the world differently, and they use their thoughts to focus on what they can control. So, this, I guess, what he is calling hope, I'm also going to call optimism. Because I think there's some very definite overlap here because we know for a fact that optimistic people live longer. And one of the big reasons optimistic people live longer is optimistic people have better relationships. And we know that relationships are the number one for longevity, living long and happy, high quality lives. It is relationships that get us there. And not just quantity, I've got a bunch of good vibes in my life. That's nice that you do. But we're talking about that one person you can really count on. And if you have two or three, then you're richer than rich. As far as waking them up at 3 o'clock in the morning, even if you haven't spoken for months, or even if you had an argument, or even whatever, they just drop it immediately and they're right there for you. That's what we're talking about. So Dan continues to say, again, I'm seeing a lot of similarities with what I would call optimism, just kind of packaged a little differently. But he says our level of hope can have a big impact on our lives. High hope people have passion and zest that fuels their energy. Very true of optimists, right? We optimists are, we are driven by high octane passion, no question. And then he also says this passion is viable and dynamic because there's a degree of persistence and follow through that accompanies it. So, again, also overlap with optimism, at least I'm seeing this, is the whole perseverance piece. Optimistic people, um, as opposed to pessimistic people, right? We talked about that in a few episodes ago. Pessimistic people have the three P's. Everything is pervasive, personal, or personal, pervasive, and permanent, right? So the optimist isn't thinking whatever said adversarial thing that's happening is permanent. They know there's a way out, may not be able to see it, but they know that there's a way out. And if they, kind of, like a bull, head down, kick up the hooves a little bit and plow forth, you're gonna be okay. So then he says, oh, see there's the optimism word. They're optimistic about their future and believe in possibilities. They see challenges as opportunities to grow and learn rather than obstacles. So I'm also seeing some overlap with what Dan is calling hope, and it is. I just think maybe it pulls from several different types of mindsets. So definitely optimism. And this part where he's talking about now, I really sort of seeing some lovely overlap with Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset. Because when he says when they see challenges or adversity as opportunities to grow and learn rather than obstacles, that's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So, an easy example would be, because I'm in academia, somebody gets a D on a test, or not my class because I don't do tests, but let's say some other test. That's just, oh, I suck. Let's just say it's statistics. So a lot of people have that math thing. Oh, see, I've been bad at math since first grade. It's never getting better. I see this shows that I got a D, and it's just it. Rather than looking at it that maybe it's college now, and this has been amped up, and maybe if you join one of the support groups, you go talk with a professor, that this is a different kind of math, and you can learn and grow from it, and maybe even become a researcher, a statistician. Who knows? But that's a difference between, or let's say I'm thinking of a Shakespeare class that my bestie from St. Mike's was in, and he was just known for his demanding. You couldn't get an A in there. He would tell people, "You're not getting an A in here," but everybody wanted to take him because he was so good. So, a growth mindset person would just take the class, even if you got a C or a B, because you absolutely loved it and learned a ton. The fixed mindset person is going to dodge that class, much like dodge hanging around a swamp on a steamy July day with all the mosquitoes and nasty things in there. And kind of same deal, because you're growing from it, you're learning from it. And growth mindset people, when they hit a speed bump in life, and not that we're saying you're thrilled, you just lost the job or you just whatever, but they're not going to see it as permanent, like I said, or personal. So then Dan goes on and says about this whole growth mindset thing, and hopeful people, as he calls them, hopeful people, growing and learning rather than seeing things as obstacles. He says this is key to the success of many high hope people. They not only bounce back from setbacks, they seem to bounce forward and keep going despite the challenges. That is made. So this is another optimistic overlap here. Sean Aker, in his book The Happiness Advantage, talks about falling forward, which apparently is also part of hope. Is when you meet up against this, life's curveball or speed bump, rather than caving in, even if it's something horrible. Right? I'm a fabulous 58. When you've lived this long, you've been through some stuff. You know what I mean? So but we fall forward, or falling up, he often calls it. And that's super important. And of course, Wayne Dyer, you know how much I love him. Wayne Dyer actually talks about there being no such thing as failure, because really, in reality, we're all human beings moving around on this wonderful planet that we live on. And whenever we do anything, we're behaving, walk around behaving all day long, right? Action, action, action. And we are creating results. Some people label those failures, but really, we don't need to do that. We are all behaving and creating results by with the actions we choose to make. So what happens is, when we, said behavior, said action, then points us in another direction, in a new direction. So if it's not working for us, might point us in one direction. If it is working for us, might point us another direction. Then there's the whole middle. But we really don't need to label anything adversarial that redirects us as a failure. That's just, really ridiculous if you think about it, right? Because we're really just kind of I think of a pinball machine, bang, boing, bing, bing, bing. We're kind of doing that and finding our way. But we really don't need. We could benefit from shaking that failure filter because really it doesn't exist if you think of it in this way. And so, all right. So Dan says they hopeful people believe that possibilities can open up when they put in the work. That's a total growth mindset thing. Carol Dweck talks about um, the sort of how we perceive effort as being a huge part of the growth mindset. No matter what your IQ is, if you were born with artistic ability or you're not, because all that stuff falls under talents, not skills. I can basically, this sums up the growth mindset. I can learn to become better at anything I choose, right? I can even become more intelligent despite what my genetics say. I can become better at this. I can be an artist, even if I was told I couldn't draw from the ground up. I can learn things. I can learn how to become better, and it's not just people who are like the Michael Jordans of the world that like the God given talent thing, and people who are not him and not famous, but who are these quote unquote natural athletes. Well, maybe you're not a natural athlete, but if you still work at playing soccer, you will absolutely become better than you were before. That's just so super important to get. If you never have, created anything artistically speaking, if you have the time, create the atmosphere, or establish the atmosphere, carve out the atmosphere, of course you can be creative. And I also like how this is Dr. Dan Tomasulo, Psychology Today, How to Cultivate Hope. He talks about tips of how to build the habit or get into the habit of hope. And like anything else, habits just an unconscious behavior, right? We can, when we bring it into consciousness, we can then change it, right? So if we're not in a habit of hope, we can certainly lean into that. And again, I hear lots of overlap with optimism and growth mindset and all kinds of different things going on here. And here, one of the first tip, or the first tip, is to set and achieve goals. And he talks about goal setting as being only as important as the action you take towards making the goals, right? And so a lot of truth in that. And hopeful people, you know, set goals, look for clarity, and then make it happen. They don't just let life happen to them. I like that because that means that hopeful people live deliberately because we walk around, making decisions all day long and we can be actively engaged in our life minutes, actively engaged in our lives, therefore, or we can make passive decisions and throw caution to the wind. And that doesn't usually work out well for us. So, hopeful people, much like optimistic people and people with a growth mindset, um, really are active players in their lives. And that is super important just in life in general. And Dan's second tip is to stick with positive people. We were talking about that. We've talked about that a lot because in Minecraft, we're all about learning how to become the boss of the brain, right? We also know that we, to some degree, actually often a large degree, become who we hang around, who we hang out with, right? So we've talked about the Peter pessimist. There was like just miserable and oh my god, it's raining on my day off. How come it always rains on my day off? Well, if you hang around Peter pessimist long enough, then some of that's going to rub off onto you. So that's why it's really important to not spend a lot of time with pessimists. Really, for real. Hang around with positive people who are actively engaged in their lives, who care about their mind health and their physical health and their spiritual health. We're not saying they're perfect. Nobody is. We're just saying to really, develop a shit giving budget and only allot so many shits to people's negativity. And if you're kind of their, family member, you have to see them on Thanksgiving. Okay, but just watch your Apple Watch and pay attention to the life minutes you're giving to it because you don't want that stuff rubbing off on you. And we also know so misery. We say misery loves company, right? Really, it's misery loves miserable company. That's how it goes. So we don't want that. And the opposite is also true. Positive energy attracts more positive energy. The good vibes hang out with each other, and the good vibes get the jobs. The good vibes have the better relationships. The good vibes are healthier. The good vibes have stronger immune systems, which means they get sick less and heal faster. and the good vibes live longer, happier lives. Just plain old true. So apparently, the hopeful crew is considered part of the good vibe optimism crew. And then Dan's third tip is focus on the present. I just want to meet this guy. This is the stuff I talk about all the time. Focusing on the present. The present is all we have, right? When we really come right down to it. And Dan says people in high hope tend to focus on what's in front of them. They don't dwell on the past or worry about the future, though they do set goals for themselves. So we talked about that whole goal thing. How we set goals, we still reside in the present. Yes. You say, oh, she's being contradictory. No, I'm really not. It's important to set a goal, but we want to put our energy into the now. If you put your energy into the now, 100%, you're doing your best. So that goal is going to turn out just fine. It's just good for clarity reasons to have one out there and then put that energy right into the now. Absolutely, for sure. And then Dan talks about be self reflective and confident. He says, while believing in oneself is important, highly hopeful people are able to forgive themselves as well. I'm a big fan. He said, this is a unique combination because this type of confidence allows a person to be imperfect. Don't we all need a huge dose of that? In addition, they will be willing to take reasonable risks to support their growth. Hopeful people know that failure is inevitable and it is important to learn from those experiences moving forward with positive momentum. This capacity for self reflection is valuable. Learning from mistakes, meaning viewing failure as an opportunity rather than a method. Let's try it over. Learning from mistakes means viewing failure as an opportunity rather than as a measure of self worth. Exactly. Remember, it's more rhetorical. We were saying that failure doesn't really exist. We're not saying we don't mess up, right? So it's just, we don't need the word. We are all just acting all day long, creating results. Those results may not be in our best interest whatsoever, right? So to look at that as an opportunity for growth and redirection. So we're saying the same thing. And also, I like the part about the measure of self worth. If we screw up, however you want to label that, it doesn't mean that we jump on the shame train. No, that we're flawed and defective, and oh my God, I did that, I got fired. I'm a failure. I'm defective. I'm flawed. I'll never amount to anything. No, you learn from the fact that you got fired or let go of, or phrase it however you want, or broken up with, or whatever, and then to be it's a tough sell when we're in it. We're not saying that's easy, but often when we look back, all those dots connect. And if you hadn't have, gotten, dumped by that person or, you know, kicked out of whatever company, then you wouldn't have landed the awesome partner you have now or the great job, or maybe you didn't even want to be in that career to begin with. And thank goodness they kicked you out of there, even though you made a good salary and benefits and all that other stuff, because you wouldn't be the entrepreneur you are now. And that's how it all works. When you look back, the dots connect. And then his last one here is keep a positive outlook. So that's the mindset thing, right? And so because optimists do not take things personally or everything's pervasive or think things are permanent. We have a really positive outlook on life. He says, you've heard this one before, and that's because it's true. When it comes to high hope people, no matter what life throws at them, they endeavor to see the silver lining. They don't let the circumstance define their emotional response. In addition to having a positive outlook, high hope people are also creative problem solvers. Oh, totally. When faced with a challenge, they don't give up easily. Instead, they formulate solutions that help them overcome the obstacles in their way. So there you go. He also winds up this in chicken and egg fashion. Positivity helps creativity, and being creative feeds positivity. Totally true. They invest their energy in the future and hunt for the good. Oh, I like that. Hunt for the good. It means it gives some intention to that. We're not just sitting back on the couch having a sandwich, waiting for the positivity fairy to dump positivity pixie dust on our heads. You gotta get up and hunt for it. I love that. Actually stalk positivity. It's awesome. So that was Dr. Dan Tomasulo, who writes for Psychology Today. And that's it. I'm really liking this. We really had a terrific conversation this afternoon on what sort of are the built-ins into high people consider to be of high hope, and also how these traits overlap with those in a growth mindset situation versus fixed that are stuck, and also those optimists. And there's just a lot of similarities over there, and it really those 5 tips I think were enormously helpful in getting those who might need a kickstart towards a more optimistic, growth mindset, high hope kind of view will really help you get going. This is fantastic. So, all right, great place to wind it up. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from the beautiful. It's actually kind of windy today, and it's super nice because there's no bugs, and it's May. Yeah, so I'm winding it up here from northern Vermont on a windy, bug-free day. There you have it. Okay, have a good one.